on oops, inspiring the next generation of nature lovers in a new role as part-time caregiver for his three grandchildren, Io, Norian, and Tethian. Raised alongside the Snake River in Idaho, Dr. Bowler grew up fascinated by nature, in particular freshwater ecology and snails. In the 1970s, he completed his PhD at UCI and studied the evolution and ecology of lichen, describing several new species new to science, including Romalina baja californica, R. sinaloensis, and R. wigginsii. In 1980 to the 90s, Dr. Bowler was active in conservation and protection of native snails and ecosystems that supported them in the Snake River. At UCI, Dr. Bowler has held many roles. He led outdoor education programs that connected students with nature in Orange County and the greater Southern California region. He served as director of the UCI Arboretum and faculty advisor to the UCI Ecological Preserve, the UCNRS Burns Pinyon Ridge Reserve, and the UCNRS San Joaquin Marsh Reserve. The latter two reserves were the home base for his research and restoration projects. As professor of teaching, Dr. Bowler taught a wide range of classes, including environmental ethics, horticultural science, field freshwater ecology, limnology, sustainable landscaping, and Mediterranean ecosystems. And without further ado, please welcome me. Please join me in welcoming, and it says here in parentheses, my fellow mammal, Dr. Bowler.
Well, thank you very, very much. That's a delightful intro, Sunny, and thank you, Rebecca, for preparing it. Well, tonight I'd like to talk with you broadly about some natural history aspects of Orange County and focus in sort of on ecological restoration that we have done at UCI, both in wetlands and in coastal sage scrub, to try to sustain the natural history that's our heritage here. So let me hope that this goes well. May the force be with us all. Yes. Okay. Well, of course, there are 5 Mediterranean type ecosystems, and we lie in the heart of the California MTE. There are a number of tools that are invaluable in studying our MTE and particularly Orange County. And I salute Peter Bryant, whom I see is here, for creating his wonderful website. And there's so many pictures by Ron Vanderhoff in here. It seems like he almost should be a co-author of it. But this is one excellent citizen science tool that's available to us today. And there are lots of sort of analog. Here's an example of one for fungi. You, CNPS-OC, have done a terrific job of constructing this synoptic tool as well. And at the end of this talk, I appended a bunch of slides with additional links, but this is an excellent start. And thank you, Ron Vanderhoff, for making it necessary to add one more plant. Yes. So here we are. And thanks, Ron, for carrying this over the finish line. Well, to talk briefly about Orange County as we get into the area around UCI, these are some of the main resources we have. You can see the peaks, you can see the mountains, and of course, UCI is down here next to the San Joaquin Hills. And here are some of our local mountains and the Santa Ana River watershed. Of course, more locally, there is the San Diego Creek watershed, about 150 square miles. And that's what I'll be focusing my discussion this evening upon. Here's the watershed for Newport Back Bay. Another interesting aquatic related resource is the Balboa Peninsula, which was formed by the flooding in the Santa Ana River in 1862. And of course, later flooding in 1938 and 1939, in which 50% of Orange County was underwater, essentially, triggered the construction of Prado Dam and ultimately the channelization of the river. We had a period of missions and Spanish rancheros, and this was an era of massive introduction of non-native species. And of course, the native landscapes triggered the plein air school of art, beautifully capturing many of our local habitats. And these paintings are widely displayed and have been displayed quite recently at UC Irvine. Well, moving on very quickly to the modern era of ecological studies, there were paleontologic studies of the Santa Ana Mountains that began to be published as early as 1918, and terrestrial research began much more than 70 years ago. And of course, paleontology was also a feature of early research on Newport Back Bay. National recognition was given the Irvine Ranch in 2006 with the establishment of the Irvine Ranch National Natural Landmark. And parenthetically, the Irvine Ranch Conservancy was established in 2005. But this was wonderful recognition for the diversity of our species-rich habitats, coastal sage scrub, chaparral, grasslands, and so forth. And it was really a magnificent tribute to these habitats. Now, today, we have a number of other kinds of segregations, the Central and Coastal NCCP, HCP Reserve, and UCI is engaged with the NCCP. And then finally here are some of our local wildernesses that you'll all recognize, I'm sure. A couple of early researchers were Jagger and one of his students who did significant early work. Dick Vogel, many of you may have known, was from Cal State Los Angeles and produced a wonderful salt marsh vegetation paper in ecology in 1966 and really sort of brought attention to it. And we actually have used his work in our research at the UC Natural Reserve System, San Joaquin Marsh Reserve, just upstream. Well, fast forwarding again in time, in 1960, the Irvine Company sold the University of California 1,000 acres because UC wanted to have an Orange County campus at that time. Well, Johnson dedicated the campus in 1964 and classes began in 1965. This is what the original campus outline looked like. 1,475 acres total, including an inclusion area. And then the UC Natural Reserve System has a 199 acre reserve, the UC NRS San Joaquin Marsh Reserve, that technically isn't part of UCI, but is part of UC system-wide, and of course is managed by UCI. And note that this is the coastal zone, so about 2/3 of the reserve actually lie within the coastal zone. This is what the campus looked like pre-1970, still very much in evolution. In 1965, when the campus opened, the Department of Population and Environmental Biology wanted to initiate studies in natural history and, of course, terrestrial ecology. And so this was a main thrust. Two high-profile founding members were faculty members were Robert Whitaker and David Goodall, and Arthur Bowie was the first chair. And I think Arthur Bowie uh, retired shortly after the early 70s. At any rate, Peter Dixon was the chairman from 69 to 76, and he was a red algae expert. I actually came to UCI in 1970 to do graduate work in that department. It changed its name in 72 or so to Ecology and Evolutionary Biology, and that's what it is today. As I mentioned, one of the department's thrusts was terrestrial ecology, and so it began to seek ways to engage both graduate and undergraduate students in those arenas. So in 1971, there was a super course that Dick McMillan spearheaded. Most graduate students took it at that time. It was an undergraduate course, but it still hosted a lot of graduate students and was sort of the educational effort that got the department on its feet and off and running. I actually ran this course for about 6 years near the end of its career in the late 1990s. Some of the UCI undergraduates and actually graduates, Rich Ambrose was a graduate student along with me and also got his PhD from UCI in the mid 1970s, are now leading figures in various departments and areas at UCLA. And then there were millions of both undergraduates and graduate students who, many of whom you know, who emanated from EcoEvo Bio. Here are a few more. I put in Bratstrom. He was not part of UCI, a great naturalist, but he passed away a couple of days ago, and I wanted to pay my respects to him. Phil Rundle is still active and is still publishing vociferously. And people like Jessica Pratt are now faculty, started out as graduate students at UCI and continued to faculty status. In 1965, UCI had a museum of systematic biology run by Gordon Marsh, and he ran the museum and also taught entomology for many, many years. And one of his assistants and right-hand mammals was Fred Roberts, yay. And the museum closed in the early 90s. The collections were largely dispersed, but the herbarium survived in storage for years and then finally was reopened in the 2012 or so era. Alan Schoner, of course, is another academic figure, a fabulous naturalist and lover of OC CNPS. And every time I hear a talk titled something like A Natural History of, immediately I think of Alan. These were some of the books that were produced by EcoEvo Bio folks over the years. And of course, today we have a broad range of a huge cadre of naturalists and botanists, including everyone in this group. Well, to switch gears back to the habitat just for a second, there have been a lot of examples of collaborative management of our habitats, and these have included increasing interactions between state, federal, county, and citizen science groups. And these are some of the kinds of representations that we have. The Irvine Ranch Conservancy since 2005, state parks, Sea and Sage Audubon, Orange County Parks, UCI, etc. Well, the University of California Natural Reserve System has 41 reserves as of today. And in 1970, the then Natural Land and Water Resource System, excuse me, reserve system, acknowledged the San Joaquin Marsh Reserve. At that time, it was called San Joaquin Freshwater Marsh Reserve. So if you've seen that, this is the reserve to which it refers. Today, of course, it's the Natural Reserve System. UCI manages 3 sites. This reserve, a reserve out in Yucca Valley, Mojave, the Burns Pinyon Ridge Desert Reserve, and then another reserve in Anza Borrego. And on the main campus, the UCI Ecological Preserve is a satellite facility of the Natural Reserve System. The mission of the Natural Reserve System is to contribute to the understanding and wise stewardship of the earth and its natural systems by supporting university-level teaching, research, and public service at protected natural areas throughout California. And there's a neat short tour, a 14-minute tour that Barry Nur has put together that you might enjoy if you haven't seen it, if you are unfamiliar with the site. The UCI Herbarium, IRVC, maintains an ongoing and continuously updated checklist. And so as of today, we have 64 families of vascular plants, 188 genera, and 283 species represented by vouchered collections at this reserve. This is an overlook of the reserve, looking at it from the old UCI Arboretum area on North Campus. As you can see, dominated by emergent vegetation, cattails. In this case, we have 3 species in the marsh. So again, this is the campus property. This was the early line, and San Joaquin, in quotes, freshwater marsh reserve. We abandoned freshwater because it's not really fresh water most of the time. But at any rate, this is the property's design. And here's a relatively recent iteration. This is the Irvine Ranch Water District, Michelson Sewage Treatment Plant, the Wildlife Sanctuary, Campus Drive, built in 1972, San Diego Creek, channelized in 1962, 63, the main Planet Irvine campus over here. This is a landfill that UCI questionably wisely accepted as part of the donation back in 1964. And this is the UCI North Campus. The Food and Drug Administration building sits here, and the new medical center is located right here, and a fine arts building will be, a museum will be established on this corner, and is currently, these things are currently under construction. This is an overlook. Again, this is UCI. Here we have University Drive, Campus Drive, MacArthur and the 73, Newport Back Bay. And this is the San Joaquin Marsh Reserve. Down here, there's a little inholding of IRWDs. And then over here is the UCI Ecological Preserve that we'll discuss in a few minutes. Well, these are just a few facts and figures about the marsh. I won't dwell on them, but I do have them here for you to look at your leisure. again, we've got a very nice species richness of wetland plants. Looking at some of the key UCI land use decisions that have influenced the marsh reserve. Of course, it was accepted by the university in 1970, and fortunately, along the way, we were able to establish a 150-foot no-build zone along the edge. So there is the edge of the marsh, the 199 acres, and then there's a 150-foot zone on UCI property on North Campus that construction is denied in. And thank goodness, because as UCI often says, land is its endowment, and it obtained the land and has developed it pretty completely, except for specified areas that hopefully will remain in their current state. And as I mentioned, at present, the hospital is under construction and the Fine Arts Museum will commence shortly. Well, looking at one interpretation of San Diego Creek history, this is the watershed. This was the old Cienega de las Ranas. This was all drained, and especially in 1962 and 3 when it was channelized. That's sort of left out of here. But it has left a very skeletal situation with a flood control draining most of the watershed. And of course, prior to this, the UCI marsh and also IRWD area was part of a natural flow of water. So water would flow down, and instead of going down San Diego Creek, would flow over this area and then into Newport Back Bay. So the channelization was a vast loss of water and sort of transformed the marsh itself. Now, just to be completely clear, a portion of the marsh had already been converted into agricultural fields. And in the end of the 1990s, we were able to get a grant. I got a grant to excavate these old fields and make them into ponded conditions. So this is an overview of the Marsh Reserve. Here's Campus Drive. Here's channelized San Diego Creek, Irvine. The campus is right here. Excuse me, let me quickly go back. And so these are all the old ag fields that were then converted to ponds. These were relatively in sort of undisturbed condition. They had been diked and so forth, but they were not bulldozed or plowed as the rest of it had been. And to give you just a couple of quick totals, over the past 3 decades, over 3,300 lineal meters of road have been closed or removed. 55 acres of freshwater wetlands have been created, and a little under 2 acres of riparian woodland habitat were developed within the marsh along the periphery. And along the no-build zone, we have around 3 acres of coastal sage scrub that has been established. So it's been a wonderful recovery for this highly damaged wetland. Again, I'll let you look this over at the end of the program. It's going to be posted for you anyway, but as you can see, it's been a long history of restoration. So again, this is another overview. This is the Hoag Hospital mitigation, constructed in about 1995, 6.08 acres, and this was to mitigate some habitat makeup that Hoag Hospital needed to do. And it was the first actual conversion that we did from old field to actual wetland habitat. Well, back in 1995, as part of that project, these are my students out there digging up California bulrush and a couple of other species. We dug up over 3,500 gallon pots and grew them. And then from this on-site genetics, they were then planted in the six acre Hoag project area. And it was one of those things. We dug them up, but we had to keep moving them as the water receded during the summer. But ultimately, we were successful. Here they are arranged. This is the old field that was the Hoag project. They're arranged here, getting ready to be distributed and planted.
I thought you were eating with your friends.
Hello?
Okay.
Excuse me, Gabriel Rao, can you please mute
It
yourself?
was a mistake, yeah.
I think you can mute her.
No problem.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
So here they are planted, and one of the things that we discovered in our research work on this was you could plant a lot less cattails and they will infill. There had been estimates that were incorrect, that they had to be very closely planted together, and we were able to make a contribution of having them be better spaced, which saves money on mitigation projects and makes that kind of mitigation more attractive. But this is the Hoag project today, a lovely wetland. San Diego Creek is right here, and the Irvine main campus is just across University Drive. Looking down on the converted ag field setup, you can see many of these are in duplicate, so we can do experiments with them. These are two large ponded areas that are essentially in duplicate. But this was an historic problem. Because of the lack of connection with San Diego Creek after its channelization, in non-wet years, frequently this entire system would dry up. Well, we have had good fortune and now have shared water rights to be able to have water introduced from diversions that the Irvine Ranch Water District does. And then they also, upon request, share their advanced secondarily treated recycled water with us. As you know, they have a wildlife sanctuary that's a sequence of constructed treatment ponds, and we can accept that water if we so decide. And it's been very helpful to avoid getting in this position again. I don't think we ever will. This is a look across one of our larger ponds, one of the largest, Pond 8. This is looking toward what we jokingly call Mordor and the Two Towers over here, the FDA building, and two business towers, and then Jamboree is on the right. One of the problems with this site was that it was way overroaded, and this is because it had been used for agriculture historically. So we tried to get rid of as many roads as we could, and this just shows you in green roads that were decommissioned. And actually, it didn't completely work because the Orange County Vector Control District required access to some of these to do chemical treatment for mosquitoes. So we compromised, but this was the original plan, and almost all of those roads have been closed or removed. This is looking at two of our 2000 to 2015 era restorations. This is a road removal project. And then there were additional drains, et cetera, put on with the second one. But note that almost 2 acres of wetland riparian habitat were created along the periphery. And just to sort of orient you again, this is Irvine Ranch Water District. This is a little sort of corner property that they have, and they have had various ideas about putting in some sort of a wetland there, but so far it has just sort of remained fallow. Well, this is what removing roads looks like. This is a large road that was removed as part of that 2009 effort. And this is what it looks like when you remove the road. We carefully fenced it and had students walk along and remove turtles. This has one of the largest pond turtle populations in Orange County. And they did rescue quite a few that otherwise would have been bulldozed. This is what the sort of sub-habitat looked like prior to the creation of the mitigation riparian habitat. This pipe obviously conducts water and was used to irrigate along the periphery. Coastal sage scrub plantings occurred here. That was part of a project I had initiated far earlier, and then this was the mitigation down here. And this is what it looks like today, beautiful mule fat and other wetland plants with the genetic stock that was used being drawn from the site. We also created a sequence of vernal pools. The vernal pools were located on the road below the bluff, sort of peripheral to the ag field set up over here on the left. This was a road that we had wanted to close for a long time and finally did. And it was a wonderful sort of vengeful, ecologically vengeful feeling to put vernal pools in them. And the Brachynephta lindalii strain that we introduced was from the main campus. There had been construction efforts that had left gouges in the ground, and I presume on the feet of bird or on birds' feet from probably Fairview. Brachynephta was transferred to these artificial bulldoze gouges that survived, and sort of to the astonishment of the campus and the consulting firm that was doing their mitigation work, suddenly here were these vernal pools that needed mitigation. So the sediment on the bottom of the accidental pools on campus was collected and dried out. And I had boxes of mud in my office for several years. So finally, this was a good way to get rid of it, if you will, to actually reintroduce it as vernal pools here. There were also a couple of vernal pools that were established using that same inoculum source on the ecological preserve. So this is just one of the vernal pools. And a number of experiments have been done using these. For example, an herbicide that the Orange County Vector Control District frequently uses is called BTI. And we tested that to see if it would have a negative impact upon the Brachynephta, and it did not. So we were all relieved about that, but it was a nice proper place to do the experiment since it was a created rather than a natural vernal pool. So again, from our drone viewpoint, here's IRWD Campus Drive, and this is the UCI North Campus. This was the beginning of the FDA building area, and this is the 150-foot no build zone that we established coastal sage grub in. And again, the coastal sage scrub was taken from rescued coastal sage scrub on the main campus. So it was all keeping local, absolute adherence to local genetics. This is a badland along the periphery of the marsh. This is over by the FDA building. And interestingly, when UCI or when the UC accepted the marsh and UCI began managing it, there were still cattle on the campus, and there were cattle over here on North Campus until the early 80s, and the same for the main campus. And so UCI was jokingly called UC Bovine, and there used to be t-shirts with a cow on it that were sort of the UCI logo at the time, back in those days. Well, because of that, all coastal sage scrub had been eradicated from North Campus. There wasn't anything left. So we were reintroducing coastal sage scrub to an area that had been denuded by historic grazing primarily. This is a hydroseed project, and this is what it looks like today. This was done in 1991. And here are a group of students, both graduate students and undergraduates, planting coastal sage scrub that we had grown both from seed and then dug up seedlings from areas that were being destroyed on the main campus and grown them in gallon containers and then planted them along the inside of the San Diego Creek levee. So San Diego Creek is just to the right over here. The main campus is across San Diego Creek from that. And so this is facing the marsh. And we planted this and it was highly successful. And parenthetically, in the coastal sage scrub around the edge of the marsh, that 3 acres, there are currently standardly about 11 California gnatcatchers that have been there for years and years and years. And probably they came from the UCI Ecological Preserve. It's sort of a hop, skip, and a jump from the eco preserve to the marsh, then down to Back Bay. And wonderfully, we also have Ridgeways rail that are now coming up into our marsh from Back Bay. So these connections are all sort of making it. And the coastal cactus wren is also now occupying and nesting in the sage scrub and cactus patches we planted, again, forming a linkage between Back Bay, our marsh, and the UCI Ecological Preserve. So we're really pleased. This is great news. Yes, here we are. We've been out there. We got these cacti that otherwise would have been abandoned. We got them planted. Yay! See this? Heather even is out there on crutches. Yay, it was a wonderful event. And of course, we followed the philosophy, plant it and they will come. So here they are returning. Well, the marsh also has one of the largest western pond turtle populations in the county. And as you probably know, the pond turtle is likely going to be federally listed as threatened, both the northern and the southern species. So this is where they are nesting now. And this is a current map showing areas of massive hatchling emergence and use. So in the marsh today, currently, we have a no vehicular access zone in red here. And this is thanks to the monitoring of Barry Nurhus and his endemic group. Well, I put these in just because those turtles do like to move, and they've been electronically tracked as having gone across the entire marsh. In fact, all the way from over in here up to the bluffs to Nest. So what are some of the challenges that arise as we come into the future for Orange County wetlands? I just wanted to toss this out to you as future managers and folks who will be dealing with wetlands here in southern Orange County. So with climate change and sea level rise, what should be considered for the San Diego Creek watershed? And from my perspective, first off, we need to plan to accept seawater basically as sea level rises. And I think we're pretty well accepting of that in the San Joaquin Marsh Reserve. At present, we can open the gate and seawater will actually come in during king tides. And so I think we can view our marsh, our lower marsh, as a very small sort of backup for Newport Back Bay as sea level rises and changes its situation. I've heard estimates that within 15 years or so, clapper rails likely will not be able to nest any longer in Back Bay. And so we already have rails nesting in our marsh, not salt marsh, but we have some pretty good comparisons with various kinds of low bulrushes already. So this is exciting. And actually, it's more than one. There are a number of them now. We need to make the flood control channels more ecologically friendly and viable. The Orange County Flood Control Group view flood control channels as the primary way to drain urban environments. And we need to work closely with them and make sure that there are ecological values retained in them. And adjacent to our marsh, just as an example, we have least Bell's vireo nesting in the flood control channel. So clearly that must be protected since they're listed, and then also in our marsh. But I think there are ways that we can make it a much better situation than it is today. And we need to consider that as we lose lower drainage habitat to sea level rise and sort of have habitat expand throughout the urban drainages. We need to think about increasing various kinds of wetland types that might diminish as climate changes. Vernal pools are sort of an obvious example, but we need to think about creating backups for habitats that might otherwise diminish as we go forward with climate change. And of course, this also means sustaining species richness, maintaining local genetic fidelity, and keeping non-natives from dominating wetland habitat as conditions change. I would also say we need to collect and preserve examples of the materials that we use to expand our wetlands, and then also, especially, of course, among sensitive plants, as they diminish, we need to collect them and preserve them in herbarium specimens, and obviously keep seeds, etc. too. But I'm just saying we shouldn't lose these existing examples as the climate changes. And then I think citizen science is increasing in importance here in California and many other areas, and that there need to be ways to increase networking with government agencies and managers at all levels. And so everything from at the top, of course, CNPS, but iNaturalist, these other kinds of tools we need to be more engaged with regulators. Uh-oh, here I am. I'm fly fishing on a king tide, coming up over the MacArthur drop structure. I'm casting toward Campus Drive, and it's catch and release only, of course, meaning that you don't catch anything, so you release anything you do catch. But this sort of shows you how I think things will be in the future with increased tidal heights. As you can see, these mule fat are all depressed pointing downstream, but there's an actual rapids going upstream over the drop structure. Anyway, I couldn't resist putting that in. And this is a view of the San Joaquin Marsh from the bluffs that you saw that were hydroseeded and are now covered with coastal sage scrub. Well, I'd like to quickly move to the upland habitat on the campus, the UCI Ecological Preserve, and it is sort of adjacent the 73 and is on the other side of the campus when compared to the North Campus where the marsh is. And this is what it looks like today, like a couple of days ago. And as you can see, it is a beautiful habitat, but again, one that was very heavily grazed. Grazing occurred here up into the 80s, and it is still sort of in recovery, but there have been major restoration efforts that have been undertaken on it. We have 59 families, 171 genera, and 242 species represented in our current, as of today, checklist that's maintained by the UCI Herbarium. So this is what it looks like. This is University Hills. This is Los Troncos. And down here we have East Peltison Road. This is the Irvine Research Center, and this area is currently not developed, but I believe there are plans to sacrifice it as well. So this is enrolled in the NCCP, and here's the 73. This is what it looked like in 1994. This is University, this is, as we call them, homogeneous hills, University Hills here. And by 2002, the Irvine Research Center had been graded, and there were plans to put California Drive, have it extend up through the middle of the reserve, and then also put what we call the Chancellor's Bungalow, the Chancellor's house right up here, so that this would have been a major take. Lovely view for the Chancellor, but a major take. The Chancellor's house, however, did not go there. It was moved to another site, and the California Road does not penetrate the reserve. So those were good things. So here's 2016, construction is complete down below here. And so this is the preserve, and it extends around like this and then goes down to Bison. So here's another view. And today there is a lot of attention being paid to the white-tailed kite, and it is being studied both on the preserve and over in the marsh as well, and other places also. But on the campus, these are the areas that are the foci. There are a number of other sensitive species, of course, present on the preserve. The California gnatcatcher, coastal cactus wren, Dudley multicollis, Prodea holohensis, etc. The lovely land snail, Hemethoglypta tudiculata, and a couple of species no longer occur there. Coryzanth statocodes was taken by the construction of the 73, and Niebla polymorpha was unfortunately just sort of wiped out by people walking on it on its sole location on the preserve. So this is a male California gnatcatcher on the left and a banded female on the right at the preserve. And here's a nest, an encelia and eggs. And these were, the gnatcatcher was extremely important in the 90s as planning proceeded. It wasn't quite known that it was so abundant in Baja, and then it was sort of downgraded a little bit, but it was a guiding sensitive species for a long time. And we monitored it on the preserve for decades. This is bulldozing the 73, and here's bulldozing on the eco preserve. Well, my students and I tried a lot of salvage experiments, trying to keep what we could of the losses that were occurring as the nightmare of progress. I mean, the development of the campus continued. So here we are, we have adult sagebrush, and we planted them on the preserve and did some studies, published a little bit. Here's mechanically moving buckwheat from the Irvine Research Center area below the preserve up onto the preserve. And we even moved a bunch of rocks covered with lichens, which were of limited abundance on the eco preserve, but just sort of rescued the whole situation. It was excellent. We tried various kinds of other experiments. Here's an imprinting experiment that we did in patterns, trying to mimic mosaics of natural occurrence. And of course, seed was collected by students on site and then used locally, both on the eco preserve and over at the marsh in that 150-foot no-bill zone. This was a sort of fun but grim experiment, moving these cacti. This site is now completely developed. These would have been taken, so we dug them up and moved them. You don't want to know what he's saying. He just stepped on a piece. Moved them over to the preserve for planting, and they survived very well. And we were pleased with the way that we learned and rescued an awful lot of cacti and other species on the campus. This is a cactus wren on a on a transplanted patch of opuntia on the eco preserve. Well, as we worked with these large rescue plants, we tried some mapping, as I mentioned. Tried some mapping, as I mentioned, and produced patterns that we then used as templates for actual planting, sort of the non-successional route, but the plant it where it's going to be in place approach to restoration. So this is the bison entrance to the campus. This was the pattern that was used. And so this is what you see as you drive in through bison today. And then this connects with the eco preserve. Well, we got some grant money as well as mitigation money to try to do restoration on the preserve because of the damage of cattle grazing. And so these were some of those efforts. Chris Preston was terrific in guiding this. This shows a sort of distribution pattern of the cactus wrens, and this was what we were trying to emulate. This is the preserve, and these are all gnatcatcher sites. So we collected salvage material locally and then planted it. This was back in 2011, and it was highly, highly successful. This is what it looked like after planting. And of course, this is essentially this is what it looks like 2 days ago. So it was highly successful. We were very, very pleased. And the main UCI campus, of course, is in the background. And we developed educational signage as well to help people understand as they walked the publicly accessible anytime eco-preserve sort of its transformation. Some of the challenges for upland habitat are very similar to those of wetland habitats. With climate change, what could happen? Well, lots of things could diminish, and other things, particularly non-natives, could expand. So I think planning on adapting to the future is going to be very important in management strategies for upland habitats. And we also need to use those kinds of thoughts as we mitigate the loss of upland habitat. There are certain kinds of habitats that we might want to increase as backup, since likely they're going to diminish. Again, sustaining species richness using local genetics and keeping non-natives from dominating habitats is going to be important. Okay. This is a nice view of the marsh. And I couldn't help closing with a little bit of humor. As we say in the wetlands, if you keep your lacunae full, you can float forever. And, and I included a bunch of links and am very open to any of you who wish to email me with questions or discussion. I'm completely open, and I have a personal website also that has a Zoom on it. So if you want to Zoom together, or we can do I can't face it time, whatever, but I'm totally open. So thank you.